All right, everybody, welcome back. Totally Driven Radio. Here we are, Frank. Are you ready?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm here. I just giving you a heart attack sometimes.
That's why I would never be able to do a show by myself because I like to interact back and forth with somebody. Play a little volleyball, some vocal volleyball here. Go back and forth, have a conversation with somebody. It's a lot easier when you got to give when you're a DJ and you're a single person and you're just talking to the masses by yourself and just doing a one-man show. You got to give a person like that credit, which leads right in for a great segue for our first guest, the man himself, Philadelphia legend, Michael Tearson. Michael, welcome to Totally Driven Radio. Do I have the right line? No, let's see. How about this line? Michael, is this one you? Welcome to Totally Driven Radio.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh,
how are you
good.
doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be with you, Vay. We go back a long ways. I really had a great time. My memories of Liberty All-Star Wrestling are some of my favorite times in my experiences in and around the ring. I love that.
And
you made me a referee.
They were good times, and it's kind of scary for myself, growing up listening to you, for many years on the radio as a kid and teenager, and getting to meet you, and then to actually be able to share a microphone with you back when we used to do our wrestling radio show back the old Top Rope radio show, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I would always say, it was such an honor and a privilege to be I was able to do radio with a legend, with a guy who's been in the radio business for decades, and he knows his stuff. I mean, it's no joke.
The funny thing is when I had that gig in the Philadelphia Daily News writing the column on the mat, I never could. I'm still amazed they took the title I suggested. They took the name Mad Dog, which I had actually picked up back in 1975, playing football against the forces of the Philadelphia Drummer, and I was a 137.5-pound defensive end playing flag ball. Had a dream day. I had 5 sacks and a safety. And then on my big play of the day, I knocked the quarterback out of the game and busted his nose. It was one of those magic moments in a guy's life where you get to level a hit that doesn't often happen in real world. You know about this, Bay.
So, you were pretty much like Rudy. You were the little guy with all the heart.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, and I've talking about the essence of doing radio, talking in a little room, you're there by yourself with the music, and talking to people who aren't there and can only get back to you a little later on the phone. That was a great time. I got to do something that if you're an artist, if you get it once in a lifetime, you're incredibly lucky, and that is to be able to start something as a form that has no history, and there are no rules, and you make it up as you go along. That's what FM Rock was when I started it in October of '67 as a sophomore at Penn.
Wow.
And
something that I just learned about you, too, recently, and I mentioned this earlier in the show, when we got together earlier this year for a little Liberty All-Star reunion with everybody, you were actually, a musical performer before you got into being a DJ, which I never knew.
Yeah, I was a solo folkie around Baltimore, and the two people that most validate that were that Greg Kinn, who had a number of hits, Jeopardy. His biggest one was They Don't Write 'Em Like That Anymore, the breakup song.
Right.
Greg and I gigged together for many, many gigs. We were in some bands together, and Emmylou Harris came out of that same circuit. And in fact, the night I first met Emmylou was the night that I decided I needed to think about Plan B, which became radio. I was back from my freshman year of college at Penn and into Baltimore, and the first Sunday night I went to the open stage, and they asked me if this girl that was brought over from D.C. to audition could go right in front of me, and I said, no problem, sure. It was Emmylou Harris at 19.
Wow.
People were in a state of shock, awe, and struck dumb, and nobody saw or heard me play that night. And I decided, it's time to think about. And I also had two thoughts. I said, first off, I got to start thinking about Plan B. And the second thought was I got to be friends with this woman yesterday. And we are still good friends, actually.
That's funny. So how long did you perform musically, though?
I played actually until about 71 when WMMR got me going really full time late at night, and I had a full enough artistic outlet doing that and creating the thing about that time was those late nights on FM radio were primary entertainment for people. There were not many TV choices then. There were not many UHF channels. There was no VCRs. There was no cable. There was no video games. There were a lot less choices, and there was not much for young folks on TV. And this was a whole new thing, where taking the art of, people turning people onto music in their homes one step further. I got to be the gate man and listen to everything. You could listen to pretty much everything at the time, and really do a pretty amazing show. I got to be an impresario night after night. And what a great artistic run of 6 years that was, until it came crashing down after I chopped a door down with an axe at the end of 76. I had permission to do that, by the way.
I was going to say, what brought that on? Did you just snap and go after somebody?
No, that was something that was long in the gestation. I had been demoted from 10 to 2 at night on MMR to the overnight show. So the basic rule of thumb in radio is if someone you like is all suddenly exiled to overnights, listen quick because they won't be there much longer. And I knew that. I could feel that. I could feel the where it was headed. So one night they accidentally locked up the commercial logs, list where the commercials play from overnight in through the morning. So morning drive would not have been able to play commercials. This was a month before we were moving from the 4th floor at 19th and Walnut to the 3rd floor. So they were basically stripping the place bare, and they locked them up. So I called up the guy and said, man, you screwed up. I'm going to have to kick your door in. He said, take out the vent grill. Well, I lied down. My first kick sailed a little high and to the left through the door. Felt great. Second kick, I kept my eye on it, and I hit it dead center, bam, and splattered that little vent grill into a sunburst-like pattern of little fragments in and around the room, reached under, opened the door, and got the logs. And I thought I saved them a ton of money because the door was going to be thrown away anyway in another month. So I got permission to finish it off. I just didn't tell them, except for the guy whose room it was, exactly what I was going to do. And I did, and they basically called that in a memo an apparently psychotic action. And I have that memo. I could have sued them on it because they're in no position to judge psychosis, certainly not without talking to me. And since I had laid it out precisely what I was going to do ahead of time, it was a guerrilla theater, and there was nothing psychotic about it. That was
wow.
That would have been actionable for a good chunk of money, but I'd rather have been back working when I was a year and a half later.
Wow. You learn something new about the Mad Dog every day, don't you?
Well, there's radio is a more physical game than it looks on the outside.
That's funny. Now,
hey, I one time
Frank.
even blew out my right knee while doing a radio show in the studio.
Wow. All right.
Hey, you got wrestlers that don't get hurt as much as I got hurt doing radio.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You had more injuries doing radio than I did wrestling.
I'm proud of them, too,
Now, your first stint with MMR, was there any big interviews you got to do, back at that time?
Less than you would guess. I was on late at night, so I was on when the gigs were happening. But,
gotcha.
There are a couple that stand out. There was the night that Graham Parsons and Emmylou Harris came over because Emmylou, vouched for me, and Graham was Graham. Graham was kind of odd, but boy, what a great night that was. There was one Sunday afternoon when suddenly I was told, oh, half of Firesign Theater, Peter Bergman and Phil Proctor and Peter Bergman are on their way to do the interview with you. I said, oh, really? And that was great. That turned into a free-for-all comedy improv show where I was, in the ring trading punchlines with the champs. It was a great feeling, and one of the few regrets that I have is I didn't record that. I should have recorded that.
Now, there's a question. Do you have, a lot of your old
Nope.
shows or interviews? Really? Nothing on tape?
Very few. I don't want to spend any time listening to my shows. I gave them at the office. I do not spend a lot of time listening to radio, really. I give it the office. I mean, while I was at home today, I basically did the voices for 3 shows coming up over the weekend on Sirius XM, where I do a lot of work on deep tracks and classic vinyl, and sometimes on Bluesville, and this weekend on Classic Rewind. It's nice to be getting to work.
Yeah, and you get to work from home.
I get to work from home, which is a dream I always had that I take even further with what I'm doing on webcasts now. There's 2 websites, radiothatdoesn'tsuck.com, which doesn't that sound like the place that needs Michael Tearson?
I love that name, Radio That Doesn't Suck.
Yeah, that sold me right away, and I've been doing, and it's based out of Toronto, so the American Digital Millennium Copyright Act does not apply.
Okay.
So I get to basically do Wild West radio and really crazy themed adventurous shows. My most fun work in decades, and it's free and on demand at the website. And it's my artwork. I don't get a penny for doing my artwork, which is probably better because it keeps it pure. And there's a new show every week. They go on the site 4 times on Tuesday, and Wednesday they go up on demand. There's a whole menu of my shows on demand.
Oh, cool.
And iRadioPhilly.com. I've just launched a show that airs there Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. on the Ziggy channel and Sunday evenings at 6 p.m. on the Libra channel called Michael Tearson's Marconi Experiment, which was the name of the original show on WMMR Dave Herman did beginning April 29th, 68, 45 years ago. So
now, that's something I've noticed too. Like all your shows through the years, you always named your shows. I mean, you had like for headphones only, The Attic, Psychedelic
Well,
Supper.
I needed to differentiate those features from my basic radio show.
But why not just call it, the Michael Tearson Show? Or you just
I was already Michael Tearson on WMMR, and this was during my shift. So I needed something to set off those features so that I could essentially be a slightly different persona to do the different shows. As an actor, I think about those things. When I'm on Bluesville, I'm a little bit more of a hipster than I am when I'm on Deep Tracks. And when I'm on Deep Tracks, I'm more of the curator of the show than I am when I'm on classic vinyl, where I have to be really quick and punchy. So different situations demand different things, and I get to create different atmospheres by creating different names for different things. Like I had a new music show that went through a bunch of names, and for headphones only was really great because I created a space where I could just be really artsy and really take it way out. That was great fun.
Now, since you've been a DJ through all the years, I mean, you've experienced DJing with vinyl, tape, CDs, digital. Which did you enjoy the most?
CDs, actually, but there are some things about vinyl that you can't do as well with anything else. There's another one that I should have recorded this because I knew I was only going to do it once. I had 3 different versions of I Am the Walrus. The Beatles, Spooky Tooth, which kind of gives it the slower Vanilla Fudge kind of treatment, and a version that appeared on an album by a crazy sax player named Lol Coxell of his school kids singing what they thought were the words to I Am the Walrus. And I zigzagged back and forth between them, seamlessly cutting from lyric to lyric, and actually live I must have done about 90 cuts over 5 minutes, if not more. And I could do that digitally, but it would take a couple of days really to line it up and do the edits on something that I did on the fly impeccably. But that was the essence of performance, I should have recorded that one.
That would have been great. That would have been something you could have played over and over, like a special
it would
time
have. I would
each year.
have done that. Yeah, I do not have many regrets. I've been lucky enough to have had a whack at most of the things I wanted to do. I've acted in close to 50 movies. I'm a member of Screen Actors Guild. And I almost had a great major part as the perp in a film that didn't happen. It was going to be really a rough shoot. It was supposed to take place, believe it or not, in April and May in the south of France. I was ready to suck it up and endure the hardship.
You've done it all. I mean, you've done radio. You've done movies, writing for a newspaper. Is anything else you want to try to? I mean, you've recorded your own album.
I did a CD. Yeah,
yeah.
And I'm working on a second album slowly. And I will be singing on May 23rd, Thursday night, 2 weeks up from tonight, at Rembrandt's near the Art Museum. There's an annual night of about 40 different artists doing Bob Dylan songs, and I'm one of them. I'm doing a song that's really a pain in the neck. It's got 12 verses, but I love it. It's called Up to Me.
Yeah, well, actually, me and Michael talked last night, and he told me he was doing this. And when he said that, he's like, yeah, he goes, this song I'm doing, it's got 12 verses. Like, I was just like, what? Like, why would you choose that?
Well, I find autobiography in it. I mean, it's in my life, I've lived out a lot of my life through other people's songs. I wish I could be a songwriter. I've tried to, and believe me, I've written some of the worst stuff I've ever seen or heard anywhere, and that's consigned behind the third circle of hell so that nobody living or breathing will ever see or hear it. It was that bad. I've even forgotten it all. I'm trying to get I'd like to get a co-writer or two on the next album. That would be fun, but consider this verse, the second verse of Up to Me, and see if this sounds like anyone you know. If I'd have thought about it, I never would have done it. I guess I would have let it slide. If I had paid attention to what others was thinking, this heart inside me would have died. I'm just too stubborn to ever be governed by enforced insanity. Someone had to reach for the rising star. I guessed it was up to me. I love that song.
That is awesome.
And there's not really much more room to shoehorn any more syllables into it. It's Dylan at his lyric best throughout that song. I mean, there's great lines all through that. I mean, in 14 months, I only smiled once, and I didn't do it consciously. That's brilliant.
So, you touched earlier when we first got on the air about your wrestling column you did for the Daily News back, it was early 2000s.
99 to 03.
How did that end up coming to be?
Jonathan Takeoff, who is still at the Daily News writing about electronics and entertainment, is my oldest friend in Philadelphia. I met him my first Friday evening as a freshman at Penn. I went to the Christian Association Coffee House, the Underground, with my guitar, and I did some stand-up folk music stuff, and I was pretty weird and funny, and I got drafted by John into his Second City type of troupe that he was involved with, and that was a great experience. But he heard, this was the year that Mania was coming to whatever they called what's now the Wells Fargo Center then.
Okay.
And the Daily News decided that they needed to do a professional wrestling column. And John said to him, hey, before you sign up for something syndicated, I think I know someone locally that can pull this off. So I wrote a sample column, and I proposed the name of the column and that I'd use the name Mad Dog. Again, I'm creating a persona that fits this, that's a little bit different than anything else I would have done.
Right.
And they bought it, and that was my first column. It was a great experience. I became a much better writer as I went along, too, because I learned some really sharp tricks about economy. In newspapers, every word is space, and space is money.
Right.
So you've got to say what you can say as sharp as possible in the fewest possible words, and I got better and better at doing that. One of the tricks I learned is that you never talk in the future tense. So-and-so will appear at, so-and-so appears at. It's punchier, and it gets the thing across really sharper. And the word that in the middle of a sentence is nearly always completely irrelevant. He said that he would be going to. He said he would be going to. See what I mean?
Gotcha.
That's just a couple of little simple journalism tricks that I learned that they just tighten you up as a writer, and you get to think more and more that way, and it influenced the way I do radio and how I think about doing the breaks, because I try to know the in and the out and the middle, so I know how to get to the exit ramp anytime I need to if I get gummed up in the middle.
And now you've been working with Sirius XM Radio for about 10 years now.
Close to it, yeah.
Now, how much different is it working for satellite radio than it has been for terrestrial radio over the years?
Well, I feel more appreciated. The pay is lousy, but I feel more appreciated, and they really seem to like me. I just feel like I don't fit broadcast radio anymore. They really don't want people who care about the content of what's on the air. And I care about the content tremendously. What I do best is to be like a curator. I shed illumination on the music. But that's not nearly so necessary in, say, a classic hit situation where it's the same 500 and a few songs endlessly over and over again. There's only so many new things to say about Stairway to Heaven.
That's true. That's true.
There's a movie called A Matter of Life and Death starring David Niven and Kim Hunter, which in the rest of the world was called Stairway to Heaven, and that was the inspiration for the song. And Niven dies too early as a pilot, so he goes to the heavenly tribunal to plead his case, and there is a stairway up to the heavens. If you ever see that on Turner Classic, you need to watch it as a rock and roll fan.
I'm going to have to make a note of that one.
A Matter of Life and Death.
I'm sure my wife probably knows what it is.
If I see it's coming up on Turner, I'll make a point of saying it if I'd had a Stairway to Heaven moment, you know. But that's just little tricks to making a Sirius XM show more personal and local by keeping track of where the artists I'm playing are going to be appearing and birthdays and stuff. They're little things to do that just add more. I got to bring more than that was and here is, because that's
right.
Boring. That's not good radio. I want to try to be at least somewhat adding something to what I do, and it got really harder and harder to do that. I really feel no bitterness about not being probably never working in commercial broadcast radio again. I'm fine with that. I'm really enjoying doing the webcasts and doing the shows at home from scratch. I was doing Saturday Morning 60s from there. I've actually done about 2,200 hours of original shows out of my home studio.
Wow. That's pretty awesome.
It amazes me.
And the one thing, like I had said to you last night, I said the one thing that you had mentioned to me a few months back when we got together was that you said, you know what, I'm still working in radio. I'm not making as much money as I made in radio, but I'm the happiest I've ever been in radio.
Hey, I haven't been busier than since I've been cut loose from MGK, and I've been getting tons more fill-in work on Sirius from that as well. So that is kind of making up some of the difference. And frankly, I'm going to be 65-year-old next month. And that means Medicare comes along, and you save a lot of money out of pocket when you're not spending nearly as much for health care.
There you go.
My costs are going to drop about $500, $600 a month.
Where do you see the future of radio going? You think it's going to be satellite radio, internet radio, podcasting?
Well, the next game changer is when internet radio gets into the cars easily. What made FM work was it got into the cars in the 60s. It was legislated that car radios and virtually everything except maybe the tiniest transistors had to be AM and FM. So that made FM available to people, and it made it commercially viable. And, of course, we see now that even the big sports are migrated to FM.
Right.
Who'd ever thought that would have happened?
Yeah, that still shocks me to this day that there's no more WISP.
Things change, you know. It's easy to be bitter about stuff, but letting go of a lot of that stuff really goes a long way. I've had plenty in my life that I've had problems with letting go. You know, I've been a widower forever, and that whole story with my wife is the great classic Greek tragedy of a lifetime. I knew the first night I met her that she was it, and we barely had 5 years and 4 months from beginning till she was gone. And, that's something that doesn't happen to many people, I understand. But,
yeah.
So you have to take, in my life at this point, I don't know if I'm ever going to find someone. I would love to. I really miss being a couple, but that may not be there, and whatever happens, happens, I just try to I don't believe in happiness, Bay. Happiness is like flash paper. When whoever throws a fireball at someone in the ring, that's flash paper. And it flashes and it's gone. That's how happiness works. Misery sticks around like a shroud, and that's why there's so many sad songs. Misery hangs around, but happy goes away. I'm more interested in contentment, which burns longer and slower, if way lower. But I think that's a rewarding thing to be interested in. I'm real content with how I'm doing right now. I'm getting by nicely. I'm not rich. I'm never going to be rich, but I've got my place, and I'm happy with it. And, things could be lots worse. My health is wonderful for my age. I might be banged up, but I'm healthy.
There you go. You're healthy.
I'm healthy as a horse. Of course, with my knees, if I had a horse, they'd have shot me years ago.
All right, so let's touch on your solo album. Like you said, you recently did your first album.
Yeah, Stuff That Works. It's available at cdbaby.com.
And like I was telling Michael last night, finally he gave it to me a few months ago, and it's been sitting in my wife's handbag. And I said to her, I think I better listen to this before I have Michael as a guest. So
that would be a courtesy. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I sat in work yesterday as I was working, and I listened to it all day long. He gave it a few spins, and I'll tell you what. The first thing that impressed me was he can sing. Like I wasn't expecting too much out of his voice, but he can sing, and he's got heart and emotion, and that's such a huge, important thing to me musically. When you can hear it in a person's voice, the heart and emotion, then you have a winning combination there.
And I'm incredibly lucky to have as a main collaborator, Tom Hampton, who's pictured on the back. He's the one holding the guitar. Tom is a guy who illuminates a song from the inside. He plays a million different things, all beautifully. He sings like three angels. And he's just finishing up his album, which is coming out in the summer. We're going to be doing an appearance, by the way, June 8th. Marshall Tucker Band is playing in Essington at the Deck. And Tom is one of the opening acts. I'm the MC, and Tom is going to have me sing a couple songs with him during his set. So that's going to be just incredible.
That sounds
Opening
like a
for
good
Marshall
night.
Tucker. That's going to be great.
That's going to be a good one.
And Tom and I just have a great rapport philosophically and musically. He's just a wonderful human being. I love the guy dearly, and he will be with me at Rembrandt's on the 23rd too. Awesome. And we're talking about another album which will be called Co-Conspirators, mostly done in his place. He's got a nice Pro Tools set up, and there's a lot you can do in a basement.
Yeah, there is. That's where I'm at right now.
Hey, there you go.
There you go. All right, so let's give some final plugs before we say goodbye. Everywhere you'll be appearing, where we can hear the voice of the legendary Michael Tearson.
Well, you get me weekends on Sirius XM Deep Track Saturday and Sunday, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, currently on Classic Vinyl, and this weekend on Classic Rewind, filling in 9 to noon Saturday, Sunday. The webcasts are Michael Tearson's Marconi Experiment at iRadioPhilly.com, Saturday morning at 8 a.m. on Ziggy, Sunday at 6 p.m. on Libra, anytime you want, on demand, at RadioThatDoesn'tSuck.com. And the album Stuff That Works at cdbaby.com, and, let's see.
You need like a MichaelTearson.com to be like a center hub for all of your universe.
I'm just finally getting around to starting to pull that together. I actually reserved the name 2 years ago and never built the site. I got to get that thing done.
How about Twitter? I ask everybody this each week. Are you ever going to go on Twitter? I'm like a big Twitter supporter now.
I haven't had it. I still don't own a cell phone. I've never had a cell phone.
That's exactly where I was going with that question.
And without a cell phone, Twitter doesn't work nearly so well, does it?
I couldn't. When he told me that last night, I was like, "You don't have a cell phone?"
Nah. I mean, the worst thing can happen, the car breaks down. That's why in the trunk at all times I have a towel, I have a blanket, and I have water.
The Mad Dog Michael Tearson, always prepared.
Hey, I was a Cub Scout. I was a terrible Cub Scout, but I was a Cub Scout.
Michael,
great talking with you, Bay.
You too. Thank you so much, and let's get together soon again. It's always a pleasure.
Hey, let's do it again sometime here, too.
Absolutely. Take care, Mike.
And you too, and we'll see you, Bay. Love you.
Love you. The Mad Dog Michael Tearson, everybody. What a great guy.